Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV on BitChute. This is a piece of exclusive BitChute content which I will not be uploading to YouTube unless I change my mind. If you're watching this on YouTube, I changed my mind. But this is a book review. Now, I don't think I've ever done one of these on BitChute or YouTube. I did one on VidMe in the good old days of VidMe, which I still really miss. But BitChute is kind of replacing VidMe, I think, which is pretty good. We got a replacement for BitChute and for VidMe anyway. So the book, what I'm going to be reading, the book I'm going to review is this one. It's called The City and the City by China Miéville. Now, this is actually the most recent and fourth book I've read of China Miéville. Now, it's a really, here's the cover. You see the spine there, and this is the back. This is the back. But you can pause and read the blurb if you want that. But I can give you a summary of what the book's about. Now, it's unusual because I mean I started reading China Miéville actually as research for the Roswell trilogy, and indeed I'm reading him again, kind of as research for my new novel. It's funny reading fiction for research, but sometimes you have to because of some of the themes of his other books. Now, the story is a detective story. It's unusual for him because he's like he writes kind of his other books are kind of science fictiony, sort of fantasy type stories, which are a bit really surreal. I mean, very deeply surreal. He's also written a historical fictionalization called October, but the other two I've read are very weird. But this is more sort of normal, I suppose. But it's still weird. It still has this weirdness about it. I mean, he's got a great style actually, and his settings and he's very imaginative in what he comes up with. Old China Miéville, and he comes up with the most amazing settings for his stories. Sometimes they're in the imaginary world, but this one's not. But it's still imaginary. What it is, it's a detective story. And the detective is a guy called Theodore Borlu, and he's Inspector Theodore Borlu of the Extreme Crimes Unit at the police headquarters in this setting. Now, the setting is a place it's difficult to describe, and I'm obviously, because it's a detective story, I'm not going to give you lots of spoilers, because on one level it's quite a normal detective story. The policeman and his trusty sidekick, a WPC called Koroi, they come across a body of someone called Miéville, a young girl called Miéville who goes missing, and she turns up dead. She's an archaeology student. She's working on an archaeology dig, and she turns up dead with some strange marks on the body. And I won't say any more because I don't want, like, it's a detective story, you don't want it spoilt, do you? You don't want to know who done it. I mean, this is not Columbo, you know. Funny thing about Columbo, I mean, when I first watched it, I thought, what sort of detective story is this? They tell you who did it in the first scene. But by the time I'd finished it, I was absolutely hooked. But this is not a Columbo type detective story. It is a mystery, a murder mystery. It's a murder mystery with a huge difference. Now, the setting for The City and the City is very strange. It's in this place, and when I'm only telling you this really to save you having to do what I did, which is go back and read the first 40 pages again. The city is called Béchel. It's a city called Béchel, and it starts off in this city called Béchel, and you know it's foreign. You don't know exactly where, but there's clues given throughout the story. It's an imaginary city. It's in our world. It's not in an imaginary world like the other stories that China Miéville writes. He writes his other books that I've read other books of his that are set on strange parallel worlds and foreign planets and things like that. Worlds where there's like railways everywhere and things like that. It's very strange. This is in our world, but it's in an imaginary city called Béchel, and there's certain clues, like I said, and on one of those you get the impression it's in Eastern Europe somewhere, and it's quite close to several other places which are known about, such as Hungary, Romania. So it's somewhere in the Balkans, somewhere near the Black Sea, and it talks about there's a river and there's a coastline. It's got a name, but it's kind of like the River Danube. It's not the Danube, but it sounds like it. And the thing about Beshel is, it's not a city in a country. It's a city-state. And of course, there are very few city-states in the world, in the real world today. There's Singapore, there's the Vatican City, there's a handful of them, Hong Kong, but that's sort of, it's a possession, it's a Sikh territory. But it's rare. There used to be lots of city-states, especially in what we now call Italy. There were many, many city-states. The weird thing is, it's when I first read this, I thought it was referring to like parallel universes and things like that, because there's another city right next to it called Olquoma, next to Beshel. Beshel is this city that has its own culture. They speak a language which is called Besh, and it's some kind of Eastern European language like Slavic or something. And but right next to it is a city called Olcoma. And you think to yourself, Olcoma or Olquoma, whatever it's called, you think to yourself, well, at first you think, well, it's just across the area, but then you realise that something's not quite right. Olcoma, is like, at first I thought, like I said, it was parallel universes, that the Beshel was in our world, but then you move on to a parallel universe, and there's one called Olquoma, which is in the same location, but it's in a parallel universe. That's what I thought at first, but it's actually not. And that's not a spoiler. Like I said, I'm just saving you having to reread the first act of the book, so when you understand what's really going on. There are these areas called of the city. Let me just find the notes I made about it. There's these places. There's some of them are called total areas. That's it. They're called total areas, which is just like normal. It's just like it's in the city. You're in Beshel or you're in Olquoma, and you're in this city. And then but then they say you have to avoid breaching. They say you have to beware of the breach, and you think, well, what does that mean? And Borlu, the hero, the copper, the Inspector Borlu, the detective, he talks about how he used to pick up lizards and throw them across to his friends on the other side of the breach. And you don't quite understand what the breach is, what it means by that. And at first I meant it was some kind of Stargate, some kind of parallel universe. But it's not. The cities, the geographical space does not change. It's the two cities are there. But what happens is there are some areas which are called crosshatch areas, and they're marked by this signboard which has this weird pattern on it, this crosshatch pattern. And the crosshatch places, how do I describe this? They're physical spaces that are occupied by both cities at the same time, because Olquoma is like a separate, independent city-state to Beshel. Yet there's some areas they actually share geographical spaces. Is there any real place on Earth where that happens? I've not heard of that before. I mean, there's sort of like demilitarized zones. There's DMZs between, like the DMZ between North and South Korea, and things like that. But I've not heard of any place which is shared by a geographical territory which is shared by more than one state. I've not heard of that. But this happens, and the thing about it is, it's like there may be a street which is a crosshatch street, and Olquomans call it one name, and Beshelians call it another. And the thing is, there are people who live in the street which are both Beshel people and Olquoman people. And they were weird because, like, you might have one house which is like a house of a Beshel person, and next door they're an Olquoman person. And the weird thing is, you have to unsee them. This is, I think, where this becomes Panwo-esque, because there's a kind of mind control involved here. You learn from a very early age that you must unsee the people who live in the other city. So you walk down the street and you have to, of course you can't, obviously you can't, you're not You don't literally not see them, because otherwise you'd be bumping into each other and driving. Forget it. The cars would be crashing all over the place. But you just learn to ignore them, but subject them to your subconscious, which is very, very an odd thing. There's even one scene, and there's a park, which is a crosshatch park, and there's Beshel children and Old Quoman children climbing the same tree and playing in the trees, and they're climbing the same trees, and they are ignoring each other because they're unseeing each other. You just erase it from your conscious mind. And the weird thing is, you can't break this rule. If you do, you are guilty of breach. That's the crime, and breaching is the most terrible crime. What happens then is you vanish, and it turns, I mean, I won't spoil it for you how, because later on Borlu discovers exactly what the breach is and what it's caused by. But it's a very weird thing indeed. Very weird thing. It's an incredible idea of creating this setting. It's a very ambitious novel, actually, that Miéville has actually written. I mean, I thought, you know, when he came up with this idea, I mean, I can't help wondering if somebody, maybe someone decided to say he wrote it for a bet or something. Because it's just such a weird idea, and he thought to himself, I mean, I'd have thought, someone suggested, Ben, can you write a book on this idea? And I said, no way. And maybe he decided he would do it. He said he'd incorporate this weird idea. Oh, and there's lots of other sort of Panwo-esque issues to this. I mean, I am pretty much a full-time conspiracy nut, as you know, and so the books I read are always in some way connected to these Panwo-esque ideas that I present on Panwo TV, and indeed they are in some way. I mean, I'm looking, everything I read, I'm looking for kind of clues to pull out of it. As I said, I started reading China Miéville as kind of research. I won't say why exactly, because it refers to my new novel, because I didn't incorporate the sort of things I learned from him, and from I've read lots of other books. Like I said, I'm reading books about spies and things like that. But I didn't incorporate all of that into the Roswell trilogy, which I'm going to incorporate into my new novel, which I'm writing at the moment. Which I don't know when it'll be finished. Do you want if I switch the fan on? It's so hot here. So I hope that's not making noise. I'm so hot. I mean, am I sweating? I think I am, aren't I? Yeah. So there's all kinds of other weird things that go on in it. Like it's a very rich, detailed setting with all kinds of little anecdotes and things like that make it very believable. And in fact, I found that in his previous book. I read a book called The Iron Council, which is another book by Miéville, which again it's set in this imaginary world called Baslag, which is a complete, like, it's not anywhere in our world. It's a complete imaginary world. It's full of things like called remaids, and which are sort of cyborgs and sort of stuff like that. It's real kind of, it's very sort of cyberpunky and steampunky at the same time. But you know, even that was very, very vivid. It was very believable. Maybe I'll review the Iron Council at some point. I'm not sure. But there's some fascinating aspects. For example, it turns out, I mean, I don't know if I will I spoil this for you? There's a connection between Miéville, the girl who was killed, this young archaeology student, this American girl, and the hunt for a lost civilization. There's this thing called Orsini, which is like an old, it's like an Atlantis type place, and I won't say any more than that, because I say it's a detective story. The fun of a detective story is not knowing what's happening, and sort of like you. A good detective story is interactive. It's almost like a game. You are putting yourself in the role of the detective, trying to solve the murder. And it's actually been made into a TV series now, I see, by the BBC, a sort of mini-series, which I've not seen, and I'm glad, because never ever, in my view, should you watch a TV or film adaptation without reading the book first. I mean, it always spoils the book. A good book can be spoilt by a adaptation, especially if it's a crappy adaptation. Even if it's a good one, I always read the book first. Is my motto. But the thing is, if a book, an adaptation, in my view, is never spoiled by the book. So now I've read the book, I can watch the TV series. And apparently, it's got David Morrissey is actually in it, and he plays Borlu, and he's been in lots of detective stories. I remember he's been in several detective stories as well, playing detectives. So I forgot the characters' names, but I've seen him in loads of. I've seen him in playing detectives before. So if I remember, he was quite good. He's quite good as this as a detective. It seems to be the kind of role he can play quite well. So I'll have to watch that next, I think. So generally speaking, I would say definitely worth a read. I'd say China Miéville, The City and the City. So check that out, BitChute viewers. I hope you're doing well. Do follow me on, subscribe to my channel, but also check me out on YouTube. I've got to see, the channel is the same name, Ben the JR Porter, but of course because it's YouTube, you separate the Ben and the, and it's in 2 words. So, but check me out on YouTube as well. I'll think of some more books and things to review for you. Do get in touch with me if you are any of my old friends on VidMe. Do please get in touch with me because I do miss you guys. And thank you for watching Hapanwo TV on BitChute. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.